and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I'm Desiree Holmes-Sharini, your host, and today I am very happy to have Philippe Brouillard with me, and I'm just going to introduce him as I usually do with a cheat sheet when I have a guest. Philippe is a best-selling author, speaker, and founder of Vita Quantum, a former top-ranked Canadian mogul skier turned into a consciousness researcher. He blends quantum physics, neuroscience, and effortless alchemy to help people rewrite their energy and reconnect with their true essence. And okay, I'm done reading. I always part. But welcome, Philippe. Let's actually get to the conversation where I don't have to read what I'm saying to you. So welcome. And first, I'm going to start off with we're going to get to your book that I understand you've explained is just launching in the US. But first, I want to talk to you about your path. So you're skiing down moguls and living life. And what, were you always interested in, how things work and physics and all that? Or did this just kind of, have an epiphany and decide to dive into that area?
So I've got an interesting path because when I was born, my dad was a medical doctor and he was also in spirituality. That's 43 years ago. So spirituality was not common in Canada and US back then. I'm from Montreal originally. So at 9 years old, I was in my own spiritual class for kids, and my parents were their spiritual class for adults. So that's a
Wow.
long time ago. Most people were still kind of going to church in the weekends or something like this in some ways. And so I always felt different. Even at school at 14, I wanted to quit school because it was like school is meaningless. Nobody explained why we learn what we learn. It's that you need to do it. Why? Because. Because what? Because they don't even know. So I
Yeah,
was questioning a
because it
lot of
said so.
things. Yeah, because it said so. This is how the system works. Let's roll in the system. Turn right, let's turn right. And so I was always asking questions, but nobody was able to answer anything. So even in spirituality, was not fully answering it. So I started my path at 18, like doing energy work, NLP, hypnotism, shamanism. I started, I was like, and I did so many certification in coaching but still like it's like trust it, makes sense, but it's still like nobody can explain why or why we're doing this. And like this question was never answered. And at some point, very successful business. So I was in the functional medicine world with my dad at the beginning. We started that 27 years ago. We were really at the forefront of functional medicine. And we closed the family business. Me and my wife, which functional medicine practitioner, continue seven-figure business, super successful, helping people for chronic pain, chronic fatigue, complex autoimmune diseases. So on paper, I had success. I had an impact. I had, like, we could say basically, everything was perfect, but I still felt there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a business that works, money is there, impact is there, you like create your own glass prison, even if you're feeling empty.
Right.
They're like, so at some point we're like, okay, I need to get out of the business. I have no idea what I want to do. But I was always in the between in spirituality, energy, and science in some ways. I knew a little bit of quantum physics and those kind of things, but I was like, never like put the things together really. And so, okay, I need to get out of the business. I hate doing one-on-one in hypnotism or coaching and those kind of things. I don't vibrate with this at all. So I start searching and searching. I landed on Quantum University, which trained like mostly health practitioners on the quantum perspective. And I was like, I don't want to stay in the health domain. I want something different. I kept searching. I landed on Dr. Amit Goswami. He's one of the forefront of everything like quantum consciousness. He's been in that field for like 45 years now. And he was like, I have a master's degree and PhD level that we learn everything on that. I was like, that's interesting. Now we're talking about more life, about living, about And basically, when you understand all of this, disease disappear anyway, because everything is relating to consciousness, energy, and so on. So I was like, that's very interesting. So he's answering questions about what life is using quantum physics perspective. So I'm like, okay, let's jump both feet in there, like close the business. That's what it did. And then like everything clicked.
Wow.
Because now we can explain, for example, hypnotism, why hypnotism works. Yeah, we know neuroscience and those kind of things, but it's deeper than everything is matter because neuroscience still is foundation is everything is matter. Everything is mechanical. Everything is
So,
in some
yeah.
ways predictable. But hypnotism works in some ways on energy because everything is vibration. So it works on a different perspective. So we can talk about this. We can talk about reincarnation. We can talk about like almost name the subject. We can explain most everything in life based on those concepts. So now it's like, oh, now I jump in the rabbit hole. And my teacher at the beginning was like, okay, what's your thesis? What's your thesis? I like, wait, I need to understand more the whole picture and understand something for because on the first year I didn't understand anything. I was like, I think I'm gonna quit because it's like an Indian guy, Indian
Hmm.
accent talking about quantum stuff. Two subject, two things that hard to understand. So, and then they ask a student to teach. I was like, I want to teach. So we know that the best way to learn is teaching.
Hmm. True.
So, and I started to get feedback is like, oh, now I understand something. So I'm like, okay, there's something there. It's something about teaching that makes sense. So I've developed during my thesis a 3 months program where we switch our perspective from everything is matter to physical, Newtonian physics, cause and effect to everything is quantum, everything is energy. So even if most people that were in my thesis were thinking about spirituality, energy, and so on, but there's things knowing mentally and rationally, we all know those kind of things. Like we know we're one, but we don't embody those concepts.
Hmm.
And that's the lack of like meaning, understanding, and applying those concepts that makes the huge shift. Because in today's world, we have the paradox of progress, meaning we have the highest level of information as ever, the highest level of comfort, of accessibility to anything, and we're sicker and unhappier than ever. So there's something we don't understand. Even if we know all of this, it doesn't change. So that's why the book is not like the 21 recipe of happiness, because all of those books exist, but doesn't change anything. So we need to understand life, how it works. And like Buddhists are saying, that number one suffering in life is not understanding reality, not understanding life by itself. So we need to challenge our perception. We need to challenge our worldview, our belief, our values, and so on to make a shift. So that's kind of a story because the why was never answered. And then when you start understanding why and how things function, how things works, then it makes a lot of sense because you bridge the gap between the left brain and right brain. The right brain is the spirituality, energy, and the feminine energy, and those and so on. So everybody in spirituality moved that route. But we all went to school where we're destroying the right brain and we're making sure everybody's left brain, which is then ethical, the logical. So if we're just talking about spirituality, we're just talking one part of things. So when we bridge the two, now the reptilian brain, the survival brain, can really let go because everything become one. And it's in oneness that we experience transformation. So if we just talk one side or the other side, we're missing the union of things. So that's why I think that the result from my thesis was just fabulous on that perspective.
And so, on a personal note,
Yeah.
but this experience that went through, grew up, your teachings and all that. Where are you from? Canada, then?
Yeah.
That where you grew up and had all of that, and then that was your school and the teacher, the one that became your mentor.
Yeah.
He was Indian, but he was in Canada teaching.
No, so his story, it's a similar story as me. So he grew up with his dad was a priest, Hinduist priest, so a
Okay.
Brahman. And so we decided to go to the opposite route, which is nuclear physics. That's
Oh,
like
wow.
60 something years ago, because
Goodness.
now he's 88, I think, something like this. Um, so, and then went to the US,
All
taught
right.
at the university in the US for years, and then went to the spirituality and come back to everything to what that was teaching, because the more you go deep down in the physic perspective, then you realize that physics and spirituality is the same thing. So then he wanted to start this master's and PhD to bring people to the next level, but we can understand that no university in Canada and the US are open to this concept. Versus in India, they're like, yeah, okay, here's the rules of PhD. This is the rules of the master's degree internationally. But then you do almost what you want, but you need to requirement perspective. So they are open to get this. So I go to India every year for a university perspective. The rest is done online. So I'm from Canada. I live in Mexico and I study in India. That's kind of my
Wow.
international reality.
And I understand you speak several languages, so I guess you kind of need that when you.
Yeah. So I speak French as my first language and English, and then some Spanish slowly, because my
Yeah.
time is more understanding quantum physics and those kind of
Right.
things and teaching than learning Spanish. But
Mm-hmm.
by living in a Spanish country, you don't
Yeah, you
have to
got to say
slowly
"Donde
to.
el baño" or "Por favor." so, so first, kind of back to the quantum.
Yeah.
I with what bit I understand, I do appreciate the that, like you say, and I do teach. When I'm working, I do a lot of one-on-one, and I understand that feeling of like I'd love to have a bigger reach. Part of why I do this show is to say, well, I'd like to help people, have a new way of thinking,
Yeah.
and ideally, people will run across this, and more than I could ever speak to one person at a time. So the right people will hear you. Um, so I always appreciate the idea of manifesting as the new age way of talking about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
The idea that uh, thought has energy, that there's you know that there is some sort of a frequency or energy to thought. And I'm asking you this based on what I tell people I believe,
Hmm.
and see if someone who's studying quantum physics can back it up, or if I'm full of woo-woo, um, or wishful thinking. But I
Yeah.
also
Great.
think wishful thinking has some power, right? I've done things like spoon bending,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I play this game with myself where if I'm in the right state of mind, I take a few deep breaths and I say, okay, I have a couple dice in my hand, and I say, okay, I'm going to roll double two. I usually just choose the double two. And when I can feel the difference in my body,
Yeah.
when I feel that I'm just sort of like Zen, and it doesn't take a long time, I just have to kind of be in a cheerful attitude and actually not care,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I'll roll a double two almost consistently.
Hmm.
And when I don't, I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's my own little like barometer.
Hmm.
So how would you, from the science perspective, connect that say manifesting, like, sending out positive intentions, staying in a positive. I do a lot of heart math, uh,
Hmm.
heart coherence, and
Yeah.
bringing yourself into a feeling of gratitude or positivity, or letting go of the outcome. How would
Hmm.
any of those things be explained?
So I come back to the thing I was mentioning. Like, if we don't understand what life is, then it's hard to understand those concepts. Because if we understand that life is from all spiritual tradition, all say the same thing. And now the interesting perspective, like to keep it simple. So quantum physics explains so many things right now from Buddhism, Hinduism, the Kabbalah, or and so on. So we're like, why the things that they don't explain as of now, because maybe we just didn't discover yet, why those things are not proven right too. So why would they be like 50% right on things that are proven, the rest is not proven.
Right.
So they're all saying the same thing, that the goal of life is like happiness, expansion of consciousness, and so on. So there's something about growth.
Mm-hmm.
So if the goal of life is growth, don't so when you choose, so because it's going back to choice, and what's the two dice? You're choosing those two dice to be two.
Mm-hmm.
So in life, you don't get what you want, you get what you need to evolve. Because
Okay.
the goal of life is evolution. Sometimes what you want is not the right thing for evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So in your case, for example, we're taking the dice. We roll the two dice. The thing is, at the moment you were saying you're like become aligned with without attachment, then you become aligned with what you want and what you need to evolve together. That's the goal in some ways, to get those two together as the most possible. And then you always get what you want because it's for evolution. So the exercise you're doing is a way to test yourself, how aligned I am. And when we're talking about alignment, in some ways, like we can say the ego self and we would call it the quantum self or the soul. When those
Mm-hmm.
two align, those two reality are easy to manifest. But the problem is, most of the time we're not aligned. We're more about duality. And when
Right.
you're about duality, for dice, it's easy to not get attached. Like, who
Sure.
cares? It's a four, it's a two. Okay, I didn't get it. I'll try again. But when it's about like, I'm gonna invest for something for my business that's like $50,000, I might not be aligned as much because I'm scared of losing this money. So I'm attached to outcomes and to result. And so now the belief and the values that are unconscious, I'm sure you're familiar, like 5% of the time we're conscious and 95% of the time we're unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be aligned with those two levels, like 100%. And that's the challenge is like, I really want this. But when I'm saying this, my body is like kind of, I don't feel it's right, or I've like tons of issues of why that should not be.
Or all the what ifs. What if it doesn't work? What
Yeah.
if, you
So
know?
I want to find a husband, I want to find a spouse. But the last time it was a problem. And so we're living those things. That's why playing with dice, for example, it's a great way to train because you train alignment with something without attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Playing with colors, playing with cards, those kind of things are easy things that has no kind of negative impact or positive impact, that has no impact in reality. So it's a good way to train
Mm-hmm.
manifestation, intention, and alignment because most of the time we have 1,000 reasons of not getting what we want. Like I want to win the lottery. Oh, but I know the money is bad. Money is evil. If I have the money, people will judge. So we have all
Or
those
people will want
unconscious.
money if I have the money.
Yeah. So all those unconscious belief. So we have our conscious belief personally, but then we have the one about the society. And for example, if we talk about politics, I don't want to talk about it because then if I say I'm pro Trump or against Trump, like
Mm-hmm.
most of the time we don't want to look bad. So we're being inauthentic. And then we're like, why I don't get what I want? Yeah, you're not aligned. Alignment is oneness. Every time you experience oneness, everything is easy. But most of the time, we're not living in that reality. So there's quantum physics experiment that show when, like, for example, we go in a meditation room. So we're two meditating for 20 minutes. And then we send the people to a room, which is a Faraday chamber. So meaning that no energy, no vibration, no signal can cross those rooms. So
Mm-hmm.
you're like in the bunker in some ways. And then what we do, we read the brain waves of the person. So we're looking how the brain reacts. So at the first person, what we do, we send sound and light flashes to the person. So the brain reacts. We know neuroscientifically this is how it goes. So it's predictable. And the person that doesn't see anything, his brain is usually, we can say, flat in some ways, and the other one is active. That's not how it is, but just to keep it simple. So at the moment, those two people are meditating 20 minutes, and then we send the light flashes and the sound flashes to person A. the person B can have the same brain reaction at the same time. And some were having those experiences, not 100%, but even if it's 25%, it's already like how is it possible? Those brain are fully connected. It's happening instantly. That's the quantum entanglement or the non-locality aspect in quantum physics that shows those concepts. So it's not just happening in our computers or all those kind of things. It's happening also at the human level. And when you don't do those meditation, for example, the brain will never connect. So
Hmm.
that's the control group was that. Every time the person was not seeing the light flashes and they didn't connect for 20 minutes, for example, meditation, no brain reaction happening there.
Okay. Hmm.
So we have the possibility to be one, but most of the time we're living such in a dualistic, like we're separate. I'm going to the podcast because of my reality. So I'm doing it for me, and who cares about Desiree? But we live in a world all the time, and most of the time, almost always, in a dualistic perspective.
Hmm.
So that's
Yes.
why you're playing with the dice. At this moment, you're becoming one with reality. You can get those numbers one on one. If I'm saying do it right now, you're gonna, you might be stressed. Now you're in the camera. We'll do this. So there's
Hmm.
now things can be dangerous in how you being perceived. So you might not get it. So I get, hey, if you get this, go to the casino, try to get, I don't know, it's seven or something. I don't know how to play dice,
Yeah.
but you're just gonna win, 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 win.
If you can stay in the state,
Exactly.
if
But
you
now
can
we're
stay
like,
in that state.
now
Hmm.
we have live, we have the emails, and we have like SMS notification. We have like so many distraction, and we're like, why don't I get what I want in life? Yeah, but you're not living. You're just being distracted. And at that moment, you're not one, but we have the possibility to be one in
Hmm.
every instant. But now about what's gonna be for supper? What's gonna be this? Oh, my friend is gonna. So we're not living in now. So the Edgar Tolle, I'm sure you're familiar with Edgar Tolle, the power of now. The power of now is true, but at the same time can be tricky because you can be fully disconnected of the reality of what life is and just living in the moment of pleasure of like doing like roller coasters and doing sports and like being disconnected of what real life is in the moment, but you're living in the moment, but you're disconnected from reality. So it's kind of it's living what life is in the moment and being conscious of what life is about. So we need to bring consciousness to the power of now. If there's no conscious, there's no power in now. So it has to be together. And then if you're fully in that moment, those numbers, those dice are a nice reflection to do those kind of things. So yeah,
In research,
yeah.
have have they found besides physical brain waves?
Mhm.
I know there have been testings that find that say they believe consciousness is you know uh, measurable, that there's some
Mhm.
sort of energetic measurement beyond
Yeah.
the, the physical body, sort of a forest field, I guess. Uh, if I'm making that word up, I don't know. But but have there been any evidence that you've come across in your studies, any physical measurement of a change in the energy field or something that shows, other than a physical change, a shift in the energy or frequency or vibration when someone is in the state of that higher consciousness?
Yeah. So there's different devices that work on the energy field, on the quantum field, on those kind of things. And we can measure this energy. For example, with ArtNet, they measure that heart is having, is it three or
Yeah,
in
like three or
feet?
4 feet. Yeah, that's
No, feet is around 12 feet,
yeah.
10 to 12 feet. Um, So there's this, but then there's different device that will evaluate like the chakras, the aura, so energy field at different levels and different colors and different vibration. So they have those kind of things. Some measure the energy in a room, so it's not specific to one person, it's like a group of person. So we
Okay.
can measure that too. So if a full group is meditating, you'll see like the device going super high versus if you go, for example, in Times Square, the energy would be like all over the place because there's no coherence in that space. So there's those kind of device that can be, but then I like to bring different things to make you think. So that's why I was saying the book is different because it's not about concept, but it's about reflecting on the concept.
Okay.
So there's one researcher, they were like, where's the memory? So we tell people memories in the brain. So the brain is physical. And the way we say things is like the brain create consciousness. That's the materialistic
Yeah. Right.
perspective of seeing this.
Hmm.
If this is the case, we get a lot of paradoxes, but they don't talk about those most of the time because they're like, if I talk about those, then we have an issue. So let's don't talk about it. Like when science started at the time of religion in I don't remember in the 1600 or something of this, they're like, oh, we cannot explain it. Let's push it on the other side. It's either religion or science, but it
Hmm.
cannot be both, which is a kind of a nonsense, but that's what they were doing. So what they did in the study, they took mice, they put the mice in the maze to learn the path of the maze. So they would have the memory of the maze in that space. So they took like 10 different rats, for example, to mice to keep it simple. Um, so they all know the maze. So what they do, they're removing part of the brain to every mice. So in the total of those 10 mice, they're removing every part of the brain, but they cannot do it on one mice because then the mice cannot move anymore. So they do this, they remove all the parts of the brain, and the mice are still able to find the path.
Hmm.
How is this possible? So now that the researcher were like, okay, so we thought it was in this physical brain, but memory is not there. So there's
They
something
were trying to find the
outside.
memory location, but no matter
They
what
didn't
they took
find
out, it
it.
wasn't it.
So they
Fascinating.
didn't find it. So they were like, how can we explain this? Quantum physics or spirituality would say like memory is in the mind, which is not the brain, which is the physical, is
Hmm.
the energetic perspective, but we cannot grab it in some ways. The other things we can bring is when people are getting transplant, for
Hmm.
example,
Oh,
heart transplant.
yeah.
So they study that shows that some people will remember the memories of the person that had the heart before that it's dead.
I've read some of
So
that.
if memory is in the brain, but I do a heart transplant, how can you remember what's the other person was living?
Hmm.
So you're like, if it's physical, so memories in the heart, that's a new thing. So it's now you're being challenged to see reality. You're like, how is this possible? Now we go to another, for example is my arm is cut, so I lost my limb, but 80 to 100% of people losing an arm, for example, still have pain.
Hmm.
So if we're just a physical body, how pain is still there, it's like a nonsense. And they cannot get rid of the pain because the pain is not physical, it's energetic at that level. So acupuncture and those like energetic work will help, but in the materialistic regular medicine, they don't get results. So
Um,
nothing, how can you
that
have
when
pain?
they cut a leaf or something, when they do the Kirlian photography,
Yeah,
and you can see that
exactly.
the shadow, the shape of the leaf is still there energetically, even after they've
Mhm.
cut it. So,
So if the shape of the leaf that you're mentioning is still there, there's a memory that's all over the space that's
mhm,
present. So in quantum physics, we would say consciousness is primary. Everything comes from consciousness. Versus in the materialistic Newtonian physics, classical physics, we would say consciousness is a byproduct of the brain.
right.
But then what we just discussed doesn't hold. Even when we looked at the double slit experiment in quantum physics, when we throw electron or photon in space, before being particle, before being matter, it's energy.
Hmm.
And without consciousness, it does not become matter. It doesn't come physical. So another proof that consciousness is primary and with consciousness can become matter. So consciousness is what, in some ways, if it's energy, we can talk about emotion, thoughts, feelings. It's a small part of what consciousness is, but it's part of this. So it means you can manifest material stuff with your conscious.
Right. And there's something to expectation too,
Yeah.
say I'm more of a therapeutic way, that if you are expecting to be disappointed, or you're expecting something to not
Mhm.
work, or you're expecting, and of course there's that game that has been played that says, okay, I'm going to say the word red. Now look around the room, you know, and you see all these red objects, but you wouldn't have noticed them before, right? But because your brain has been primed with some sort of
Yeah.
trigger,
Yeah.
you're going to find it. And I think the same thing is true for, say, relationships, health, or uh,
Right.
you know, politics, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
speaking of energy, the charts that show frequencies
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on emotions, right? And how the fear is,
On
a
the
very
bottom.
low
Yeah.
frequency, and joy or love is very high frequency, and everything in between. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that something, that you would tie to quantum physics and your experiences or studies?
So everything is energy, everything is vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing in the chart, there's nothing positive, there's nothing negative. If we're saying positive and negative, we're still living a dualistic perspective again. We're being separate. It's good or bad, it's ugly or beauty. If we live in that space, we're still living like in the 3D world, and we're suffering a lot in there because there's judgment. Every time there's a duality, there's judgment. The chart is what? Different vibration. That's what it is. There's nothing, fear is nothing bad. It's just a lower vibration. And joy, peace, which is are at the top, and love, different vibration.
Okay.
So we can read the brain. We're what? Reading brain waves. It waves are vibration. The heart's the same thing. So everything which is energy is vibration, and every vibration is information. So when we talk about the quantum entanglement non-locality concept, when we take two electrons, for example, we connect to each other, then we separate at the other end of the world, then what we do to one, the other one does it automatically.
Mm-hmm.
There's a transfer of information there. How does it knows that something happening to the other one?
Yeah.
So we cannot calculate, we don't see the information being transferred because it's happening outside of space and time because it's instant in that space, but information is transfer. So everything is information. We can say in some ways everything is consciousness again.
Right.
Those words in some ways, not 100%, but I like to keep simple because we can like there's a flower on the carpet and we just dripped on it, but who cares about those things? So we can say like vibration, energy, information, consciousness, they're all the same thing in some ways, but there's different level. That's it. So the more you grow, if life is raising consciousness, so the more you go on that scale, at 700 scale, based on the scale of Hawkins that we're talking, it's like your first level of enlightenment. Enlightenment, if you think of that, white light, it's the highest vibration. So if you're looking at the chakra, very interesting. The lowest chakra, the red,
Mm-hmm.
is the lowest vibration on the chart of colors.
Color.
And the highest is the purple, but yeah, the blue
The,
purple at the
the
end.
and the
So
chakra system has been around for longer than we know,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So if you look, it's funny because when you look at the rainbow, they're the same colors. It's
Yeah.
just different vibration again. But we
Mhm.
see so little. And what we see is from red to purple, violet, and everything outside, we don't see it, but it's still there. And then it represent like 0.11% of reality, what we see. And even quantum physics says reality is 99.99999% empty space or energy.
Yeah, like,
Buddha
well, we
was,
don't know. It's just empty.
yeah, Buddha was
Nothing to
saying
see
this.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing to see here. Yeah,
Don't look
everything
behind the
is.
curtain. We don't know what that is.
Yeah,
But at least it's making progress now with people studying and even
yeah,
actively speaking about quantum physics
yeah.
and that the reality beyond the 3D physical material world. I think we, as you know, you're pointing out, we can only experience so much, and I think our limitation as human beings is that if we don't see it, we don't believe it. If we can't touch it, feel it, smell it, whatever, and we're basing it only on our
So
senses, that we're yes,
how's this function? Unless
yeah,
Wi-Fi is
to
like
the
you
limit,
don't
yeah.
see it, but
It
it's still
would have been,
working.
magic back in, if we'd landed on some island where we are, woo, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that has happened when,
Yeah.
stories of, angels coming down from the skies, probably in a day past, was not necessarily angels, by another name, might be anything, but, but, and I'm always wishing that people, like you say, could step out of the physical brain and experience the wonder of the mind, because it is limitless
Uh-huh.
if experience that this is not all there is.
Yeah.
Like, people will heat something up in a microwave, they don't see it working, they don't see the light flashing around in
Yeah.
there unless you stick metal in it, but then you get an idea of what's going on. um, and so I just think it's so important. And
Yeah.
yeah, I want to go to your book again.
Yeah.
So what is the format of your book? You have it there, right? Can you hold it
Yeah.
up to
Well,
everybody?
that's the English version of the book, Rethinking
Okay.
Happiness. So the format, so we written the book. So I co-authored the book with my dad.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
he brought his experience for 46 years of medical doctor and spirituality in that book at the same time. So for example, we put like four section in the book. The first section is a new vision of the world, where you would understand like the quantum perspective. So
Mhm.
we brought the different perspective to understand the basic of things. And then we brought it to like the part two, we brought those concepts in different domain, for example, education, um, work, business, leadership. We brought in different perspectives because we understand concepts, but then the question is, how do you apply it? How does it live? That's the biggest challenge. So, like a lot of people that I met over the years, they're like, oh, I'm super spiritual. Like, I believe in oneness, but they're consuming so much even more today. They're polluting. And every time you're polluting, you're what? You're putting yourself, if you believe your oneness, but people doesn't, it's something simple. You said to somebody, oh yeah, it's true. Okay, but why are you polluting that much? Oh, I never thought of that. So it's kind of, we know those things, but it's like we don't live by those things.
Mhm.
So we would go in those and then we give a section three, we just feed what people want, like the little tips and tricks to do this. And then we finalize with more complex concept. That the goal is to live in a new world, is to change how we're living in that space. In French, we called it rethinking life. In English, it turns out to be rethinking happiness. But
Mm,
those two things are intertwined because you cannot be happy if you don't understand life. And if you don't understand life, you cannot be happy. So they
mm.
goes together because even all spiritual tradition would say the goal of life is happiness. So the person I work with the book, they were saying, life might be too intense for people. Okay, let's talk about happiness. There's not
Oh,
much book on life. When you look on Amazon, I didn't think of that, but there are almost no book that talks about life. They
ah,
all talk about a subject of life, like happiness, for example. There's tons of books on this. So
yeah,
I was like,
interesting.
huh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, maybe
So
life is, like you say, people want the easy way. Of course, I do
yeah,
too. I want an easy way, right? Don't you? Everybody wants the easy way, and I think life, I can understand how they might think, oh, that's too much.
yeah.
That's more than
Yeah.
I can handle. I've got life. I don't. That's overwhelming. Oh, I want to be happy. I'll
Yeah.
I'll buy this
So
book.
So I love what you said. I want the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know that to become, for example, high-level athlete like I was, 21 in Canada. Canada was the strongest country, and it still is, in that sport of mogul skiing. Um, to do this, you don't want things to be easy because you'll never get good.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be challenged, you'll fail, you'll hurt yourself, you push yourself to outside the limits of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
In business, they're saying a lot of time to be a good business person, you need to fail bankruptcy once, you need to fail. At school, they tell you failure is not a thing. You should not fail because that's mean you're a
Mm-hmm.
failure and you're worth nothing.
Yeah.
So then we have a contradiction, and the best way to succeed is failing, but you cannot fail at school. And then we start living and like, oh, I wanted things to be fun, simple, and but we know to grow, you need to fail. You need to
Mm-hmm.
experience things. You need to be challenged. But no, not in my life. I want
Not
to
this
be
time.
simple. Not this time, yeah. So we confuse happiness and pleasure.
Uh-huh.
That's chapter 2 in the book. That's the main chapter because if we don't understand those two words, we think happiness is pleasure. Even the dictionary mix the two. In the definition of each other, they're putting the definition, the words of the other one. So if we go from a materialistic perspective, Newtonian physics, classical physics, pleasure is from that side, and quantum
Right.
energy is happiness side.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't feel good because your week was hard, you go take a drink, you go out with friends, you go get pleasure, which is very
Mm-hmm.
hormonal, which is very instant, which is very intense most of the time, and then it drop down. So if you're not feeling good, you're gonna do it again, and you're gonna do it
Do
again,
it again.
do it again.
Taking a pill. Yeah.
And then, but it can be a pill, it could be
Well,
any.
it's like
So there's
medicating itself. Yeah.
yeah, so there's Dr. Gabar Mate. He's a specialist in
Another
brain
well-known
issues.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he talks about those things. And this, when I read this book and his things, I'm like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The addiction of pleasure. But he would call it more about the addiction of behavior. So every repeating behavior that you cannot stop, it's camouflaging something that you're suffering, but you don't want to deal with it. So you're always going to put pleasure on it to feel good. So you're not dealing with your problem because you're putting like camouflage, you're putting cream cheese on it or like cream or something good overall,
Right.
but you're still suffering.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so glad you're pointing that out and bringing that up because with NLP, as you've studied,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I appreciate it for the using it for helping people shift the words they use.
yeah.
And moving away from something being hard or something, or like I change, say a negative situation, somebody might call it, or a hardship, and I say it's an opportunity, as corny as it sounds. Can you shift that and say that's an opportunity for you to grow and move beyond that and show yourself that, look, I can handle this.
Yeah.
I can come above this. And also the idea of growth on a soul or spiritual level, the idea that and I've heard it stated that if we're all part of the one, if we're all part of God or the universe, that the goal is expansion and growth
Mhm.
and experience, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
a fuller experience, and as above so below sort of
Mhm,
idea
mhm.
here,
Yeah, yeah, that's
that
correct.
that if we stunt ourselves from all experiences and insulate ourselves, then we don't have that opportunity to expand or grow in a spiritual way. And I believe in reincarnation and a soul's journey.
Mhm.
So, like, there's seeing the bigger picture.
Mhm.
Ideally,
Yeah, yeah.
from my point of view, is that hardship, yeah, it's not fun, but just it's almost like the Eckhart Tolle or what is just say, oh, this is what it is, and
Yeah.
how can I best respond to this and allow myself to grow through this instead of staying in a place of suffering.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
It's interesting because I like to bring it back to sports or can
Mhm.
bring back to, for example, military and level and those kind of things. But it's like when you have a setback in sports, you might be frustrated, but you're like, okay, there's something I need to learn from this.
Mhm.
So the setback becomes more an opportunity for growth. But in our everyday life, we don't want to have those because they're uncomfortable. So there's a main concept in quantum physics that says everything is it's the uncertainty principle. Everything is uncertain. But as human being, we want to control everything. Our brain even is designed to always predict the future to survive in some ways. So we all want our comfort zone. So even we are in a job that we don't like, we're going to stay in it because it's predictable. It's
Mhm.
comfortable in some ways. Even if I'm suffering in it, I was going to stay in there because I know the salary, I know my boss, even if I hate my boss, I know my coworkers, I know everything. If I'm going to a new place, I don't know what's going to happen. And
Mhm.
not knowing is freaking out the neurological system,
Right. Fear of the unknown.
fear of the unknown. So that's the biggest fear. So we prefer suffering in the known in our life than changing and transforming. So that's why when you don't receive what you want, you're like, nope. That's why a trauma is a very interesting aspect. Because for me, I love traumas because they can have positive or negative. It's a trauma, it's how you react to it.
Exactly.
But the thing with trauma is even if it's something that happened that can make you grow, you'll never do it again because maybe somebody laughed at you at that time.
Mm.
So you're like, never somebody gonna laugh at me again. So your brain is always tricking you and make you suffer because you don't want to move against that. So I like in some ways to trigger positive trauma because it's a quantum leap. That's what a trauma is. It's instant. It's you're being challenged with something in an instant you're being transformed. But you took it in the negative side or a positive side, not words that I like to use, but it's an easy way to those because it's still dualistic. But it's an easy image to show. But like if I confront your perspective so much, in some ways it's a trauma, but it's a positive one. So we put everything as negative or positive. It's like
Mhm.
that's what I wrote in my shirt, the electroshock.
Okay.
So the quantum
That's nice.
electroshock is like I'm saying something that's going to challenge you enough that you're like, okay, what about that? So I love
Mhm.
to share one story about like things that believe that we have a physical body. Even people that doesn't really believe that are being still challenged by this study. So what they did, um, they took people in a room and they took a prosthetic arm, which is just like silicone,
Okay.
and they camouflaged the real arm, so you're not seeing the real arm, and you're seeing only the silicone arm. And then we start just like to do little touching on both arms at the same time. So you start associating the feeling of the silicone arm. And at the end, move forward. I can take a needle and put in your real arm, and you don't feel anything. It's your arm, but you're not feeling anything. I could
Mm.
burn your arm and you don't feel anything. And then I do the same thing to the prosthetic or the silicone arm, and you're reacting as it is your real arm.
Wow.
So now you can see it's like, wow. So are you really your physical body? Or you think you are your physical body?
Yeah. It's sort of like the phantom limb idea that your mind has
Yeah.
told you that that's your arm.
Yeah. So
Fascinating.
then you're like, now I'm kind of confused. So that's why one of the saying in quantum physics, if you think you understand something, is because you understand nothing. Because those concepts are so far-fetched to what we learned in the school, at university, in the society, with corporation, with government. Then you see something like this, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Does that mean that I can walk on fire and not burn myself? Like what Tony Robbins does with
Yeah, yeah.
thousands of people?
Hmm.
So how is this possible? If we realize one thing we said earlier, we're 99.9999% empty space, then my physical body is still 99.9999% empty space, but it feels really hard. And water doesn't drip down and the blood too, but it's mostly empty.
Yeah, yeah. The atom is mostly, and that was fascinating too. You
You're,
know that when well, you're younger probably, but when I was in school, maybe even still, they teach like here's the electron,
yeah.
and here's the neutron, and here's and as if they're physical little ball
Mhm.
bearings
Yeah,
floating around in there,
that's correct.
but yet to find out that they're not solid.
Just a cloud in some ways.
It's just an
Yeah.
energetic
So
flow.
this is kind of that's my company logo, Vita Quantum.
Okay,
I've
yeah,
created that like the
that's nice.
physical one of the electron because if not, we're just doing the center and everything around does not exist.
Hmm.
So, but people all learn that this is the concept, but in reality, that's not the concept of an atoms. And atoms, and in reality, what's physical, it's like the neutron, which is a kind of physical reality in some ways. But outside of that, it's just a cloud.
Which just sort of goes to the observer effect. You
Hmm.
talked about the double slit experiment, and
Yeah.
for anyone who's watching that this doesn't know what that is, just look up double slit experiment on YouTube. You'll see it, and that even with even with a camera watching,
Yeah.
that it can change the outcome, which is very curious. That
So
the you know
the camera, so that's a little tricky thing. So when
okay.
it's a camera, camera is a physical device.
Hmm.
So we say everything is consciousness, okay? But it's not conscious by itself. So we need to have a conscious observer
Hmm.
to pass from this cloud of energy to this physical matter electrons, for example. So if it's a camera, the camera is not conscious by itself. So it needs
Right,
to have like a human being looking at the camera to have it materialized. But if the camera is there and nobody looked at the camera,
right,
then it won't change anything.
right.
There's
And
there's a
we don't know until we look.
that's the thing.
What?
So there's a crazy study they did. It was in the 80s. So what they did, they use a random number generator. So it's quantum device that just generates 0 and 1, 0 and 1, 0 and 1, like for if you leave it for so long, then you'll get approximately like 50% of each.
Mhm.
So they create the results. They print it on a paper. Nobody look at the results. So now it's a physical printer that look at the result in some ways. It's printed on a sheet of paper. The computers see the results. They put it in the floppy disk, the old big diskette
Yeah.
for computers. Um, but nobody look at the results. The results are print. The result on this floppy disk, this diskette. And then months after that, they're asking psychic to influence the result, to get either one or zero more.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, the statistical difference is like 8,000 to 1, the probability of not getting it. So they changed the results. So now you're like, okay, for example, the results are print today, and 3 months from today, somebody changed the result from today.
Okay.
So they're not just changing the result in the moment, they're changing past results. So if the
Critical.
printer and the floppy disk are conscious, then the results are already printed, nothing can be changed.
Okay.
But no conscious observer looked at the results, so the results are still in possibility until those psychic change the result by their conscious, their thinking, their connection, what you're doing with your dice, for example. So we can influence results easy in some ways if it's not looked by a conscious observer yet.
All right.
So we're getting kind of in the complexity of things. I
Uh-huh.
like to keep it simple because then you're like, okay, now I'm opening up like 1,000 questions
Right.
because it's like, oh, okay, what about this? What about the future, past?
Right. Exactly. Because, well, of course, outside of our material reality, uh, we do go into that strange, hard to understand realm of everything all at once kind of a
Mm-hmm.
scenario where there it's not a literal timeline. It's
Yeah,
overlapping and intermingling,
yeah,
which I just find fascinating. Love those movies where they try to change history and then it's just keeps going. Whoops.
yeah.
Um, Similar to the study you just mentioned, and of course I can't remember the details, but there was something similar to where they had people pray for patients
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, that were patients in the past, and somehow it changed their outcome, even though I forgot how it worked. But it
So,
was,
so I'll explain. I know
you
this
remember
study.
it?
So,
Yeah.
so I don't remember the exact number of groups, but I think there were two groups.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the control groups, meaning, for example, there was 100 patients, 50 patients were not um,
Prayed for, or yeah.
prayed for, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the other group was prayed for. And this was a group of patients years back in the past.
Yes.
So, so the group that was prayed for, their result of getting healthier were like way better than the other group that didn't be prayed for. So now are we influencing the past? Or that could be the answer. Or consciousness knows that to
Mm-hmm.
prove those concepts. So it's like, is it the chicken and the egg? Which
Yes.
comes?
Did they know that those people are the ones that got better, and just perchance that they're the
Yeah.
ones that land then in the study that are being prayed for because it acts upon they
So there's no difference.
mutually react can act upon each other.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you would do a
Uh,
similar things, but you're praying for people that are right now sick, and the people that are sick and being prayed versus the other great not being prayed for
mm-hmm.
will get a result if they're being prayed for. The study shows this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And we're
which I
talking about in the
fascinating.
linear time frame makes sense, and the other side makes sense too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a proof that past, present, future is no difference. Even Einstein was saying this. And we can show that time is relative in how you perceive reality. They take, for example, you're in a train and there's another train coming up on the other direction, and the rest of the things around side doesn't move, and then time become perceived based on how speed is going. So there's other variable that manage time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're having fun in something, time pass faster. But
Yeah.
time
Our
based on the
perception.
clock is the same thing. It's a perception. So all of this, if it's a perception, then what's the difference? So that's the concept. But one thing you mentioned, like our perceiving reality as physical, but reality is not physical in reality that we were mentioning it. And they were saying what would those scientists would say is like, yes, the table is very physical, it's very Newtonian physics or classical physics, but the table is always moving, but we don't see it. It would take like 7 million years to see the table move. With a
Mm.
laser, we would see it right away because lasers are super precise. So the table is acting quantum 100%, but because the center of the mass, the table is so big that the probability of seeing the table on the other side of the room is almost zero, but it's still not zero. So everything is quantum in reality,
Mm-hmm.
but we perceive reality, the 3D world, as classical Newtonian physics, but it's not reality.
And it does come back to again what we can physically see.
Yeah.
So I would segue into say the spiritual world of
Yeah.
say spirits, or some
Yeah. Yeah.
Halloween's tomorrow as we're recording this, so ghosts.
Yeah.
Um, and objects. So one of the things in studying psychic
Yeah.
work or mediumship is you take something that belonged to somebody that they wore frequently,
Mhm.
and you hold that and wait for impressions or information
Mhm.
and make note of, well, I'm, picturing somebody like this, and maybe I'm
Yeah.
smelling cake, and I'm like, and you may find that, yes, that fits with the person who owned it, that there's
Mhm.
some sort of energetic signature left on an object or in a room. If you say you have a, haunted house, there's some sort of energy that's like a phantom limb, perhaps,
Yeah.
um, left in a room, or and that even though we can't see it, physical, someone who's out of their physical body, not alive in you know, regular physics anymore, doesn't mean they're gone. As they would say, nothing's created or destroyed.
Mhm.
So they've just shifted into a, they're experienced at a higher, different level frequency than we can touch, say, smell or feel usually,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's correct. It's somewhere. Yeah.
So you talked about the meditation and the experiment, that when people were in a particular state, that then they might be able to transmit
Yeah.
or have a shared experience. And I
Mhm.
feel the same way, perhaps about spirit communication or about spiritual hypnosis, which
Yeah,
I'll do
that's
for
correct.
people, and that to get into that state, your mind then can, you can, the trick is, of course, shut down that conscious, critical, like physical mind, and let it take a rest, and then your mind instead of your brain
Mhm.
has
Yeah.
that opportunity. So I just love talking to you about the science, the idea of why this is not uh, just made up, and history and eons of, well, I
Yeah.
don't know, eons, but thousands of years of uh, other studies, and particularly religions, say Hindu, for example, just finds this is perfectly normal.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's correct.
so,
Correct. So, so if we, the different ways we can look at this, I would bring it the way that I would explain the science of reincarnation.
mm-hmm,
Um, because there's kind of three foundation to the science of reincarnation. There's the first thing is like near-death experiences.
mm-hmm,
Near-death experiences is somebody that's considered dead and come back.
right,
Um, and meaning that their brain is dead for at least 5 minutes.
okay,
You get usually quite big impact on your brain. So you have side effects to this because there's no oxygen to your brain.
mm-hmm,
Some would pass for 6 to 10 minutes and recall. Some would recall, for example, they're in the ER. No, not the ER. OR, sorry, OR. Um, they would tell exactly what the doctor were doing in the room.
right,
And if we're just physical, then we still have an issue. And then it goes back to, oh, memory is not in the brain, memory is outside the brain, then might be possible. Again, we're going to back to this. Some have a recall of all their experience during this lifetime, which
mm-hmm,
would take months to remember. It takes like 6, 7, 8 minutes to do a full year review when you're like 60 years old. Good
yeah,
luck to do this in 60 minutes. In 6 minutes. So that we're like there's something outside our physical body because now all the thing we can measure all dead, but then you come back and everything is perfect. The person is transformed. A lot of time the person becomes so much lighter. Life is not an issue anymore.
change
And
your perspective for sure.
yeah, a big change in perspective. So then you're like, okay, that's one thing that's kind of weird. If you don't believe in that,
They didn't just disappear. That wasn't
yeah,
just black. It
yeah,
was, they still experienced
exactly.
beyond, being
Yeah,
in their body. And
yeah,
so many people describe, like if they're on the OR table,
yeah,
describe watching it from above.
that's correct.
like they can see themselves,
And
and
they
it's
would
not like
say
they're watching from here. So,
you took that object A that like me and you have no idea how this is scalpel is named because they have every scalpel has different names and every tool is a different name. So when the doctor asking the nurse, give me this,
mhm,
you're giving the right tools. So if you're not a doctor or you're not in the ER in the OR, you have no idea of those tools. But the
right.
person can name all the tools. You're like, hey, how is this possible? Like, and there's not like just 5 person that recall those. There's lots of people.
Very many. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or they have the experience of going toward the light or
Yeah.
encountering
That's another thing.
love, ones, and then being told, no, you got to go back. And that's a common
Yeah, that's
story.
common. And
Um,
most of the time, for example, if you're a Christian, you would might see Jesus. If you're a
mhm,
Buddhist, you might see, for example, another Shiva, for example. So you would see we can call them deities or masters based on your personal belief.
mhm,
That's what they experiences towards the light, and um, that's one thing. Another thing would be reincarnation data. So having kids remember things from past life,
yes.
then you go researcher, go back then and find those things and find the information. Even they could have physical birthmark. So
Mhm.
somebody got shot and they're like, yeah, I got shot from World War II in that space, da, da, da. And then they find exactly
They
that
carry it
information.
over somehow onto their new physical body. And I do past life regressions for
Yeah.
people. And often, and with me and my colleagues that work in this, so many of us have had clients and ourselves where after the event, after the session, go and look up, the name, the ad, like we'll ask, what was your name? What year is it? Where are you?
Hmm.
Do you have an address or anything? So we try to give them something to go and research. And so many times you actually find the address, the name of the person,
Yeah, yeah,
and that this was real, and not just like you made up a story, because there is evidence that can be researched and found. So, it's this continuum of overlapping time, and it's just fascinating.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you put like those things together, you're like, okay. And then you bring the other things with the mice, and then you bring with the when you put all those things, now you cannot see life the same way.
Mm-mm.
That was my thesis. I was like, okay, so I've developed a 12 module program where we go to those concepts to challenge how you perceive reality, how you see reality. And by doing so, your whole life changed. For example, we don't talk about nutrition, exercise, and those kind of things, but we had 34% diminished in symptoms,
Mm.
stress diminished by 33%. I would say real happiness because I say real because I was asking the question at the end. Because if I'm asking you right now, for example, how happy are you?
Yeah.
And then you say, I'm this happy. And then I tell you what happiness is, and you're like, oh shit, I was not happy.
Right.
So I was asking also the question at the end, what, how you were happy before and now at the end, and was increase of 36%. And
Hmm.
neurotransmitter, the brain hormones, chemicals, a 40% improvement. But we didn't talk about any stress or those kind of things. We
Didn't
changed
do
how
any of the
you,
traditional, just
yeah.
kind of expanding,
So
helping
that's why
somebody
I go back
expand.
to what Buddhists are saying. The number one suffering in life is not understanding life by itself, how reality works. Now we have
Mm.
quantum physics that explain all of this. And when you shift all of this, for example, in my program, I have 12% of people that experience a one next experience, a mystical experience based on the research. And to
Okay.
go back to one thing you were saying, we can explain what's happening here in the 3D realm. And there's one question but one of the main questions in that kind of research for one next experiences, mystical experiences, you cannot describe what you experience because you experience something out of this world. So if you can describe it, you
Then
didn't
it
really
was,
experience one.
I had that just once, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, what was going on with that? It was like the movie Lucy.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I call it like, it was like a Lucy moment.
Hmm.
And I, I don't, I think I was just waking up, and I was kind of in that liminal,
Yeah.
brain stage. And I just had this flash, and like you say, almost like everything running before my eyes. Like I was like, oh, I get it. I get it now. And then next thing you know, I'm awake, fully awake, and I could not, for the life of me, explain or describe
Yeah.
like what I got.
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was just, it was just like this all-knowing eye or something. And I don't know that it changed my life, but I was like, wow, that was cool.
Mhm.
And there was a sort of a, like you say, sort of a sense of like, huh, I guess there's really nothing to worry about. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
when you experience one, I've experienced a couple of them, but it's like it's not something usually you talked about. But a
yeah.
lot of
To
people are
who,
like,
right?
did you experience one? Did you experience one? So I do a lot of different things for many years. So a lot of people asking me, and the last person was like, oh, because you cannot describe it, you didn't experience one. Like you don't understand what a
Yeah.
real experience is. So I'm in that field. I'm researching this. I'm like, this is kind
Hmm.
of because we know based on science that people experience those kinds of events. Usually there's a shift happening in their life after those kind of events.
Hmm.
And it's not something you can see from outside. Some would say like you would start shaking and no, that's like just energy flowing too much and you cannot maintain it. Most of the time, by having experience in, and I know a lot of different people that experience them, they're like, it's happening inside. It's not
Hmm.
happening outside. Outside is the 3D reality. It's not, the energies can be so much intense inside, but it does not show externally. So
Yeah.
that's everything's happening inside. At the moment it's happening outside, they're like, yeah, you might smile more, you might, people can see there's like, hey, you might glow more, you seem lighter, but it's not
Hmm.
something you can say, oh, it's because of your cheek. There's kind of the aura, there's the energy of the person that's shifting in the moment. Um, so the challenge with this, for example, a lot of people that experience one usually never experience the second one.
Hmm.
They are attached. They're like, I want to experience another one. And the
Okay.
moment you attach, there's no more possibility.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So if you're attached to the result in quantum physics, everything is possible until it's manifest. At the moment it's manifest, it's done. So if you attach, it's manifest. There's no more possibility.
Mm.
So you need to let go. For example, if
Yep.
you want to manifest something, you're 2-2. If you're attached, it's finished. You won't get them.
Exactly.
The moment you let go, then everything become possible. I talk a lot to my entrepreneurs and clients. And I say, okay, so the way you put your goals, you're doing like moon goals, meaning you're like GFK that say, we're going to go on the moon, but I
Uh-huh.
have no idea how to do it, but I trust that we're going to do it. So the trust is there's no attachment. And it's so big that you cannot know the steps. Because if you know the steps, then it's going to take a lot of time. It cannot be magical. So it's predictable. So there's
Mm.
no magic to it. So if it's
Yes.
so big that you cannot predict the steps, then you can let the magic happen. You can let quantum physics happen. You can let manifestation, synchronicity, and so on, because you cannot control it. But then do you believe it's possible? Most of the
That
time, moon
isn't
goal
that the
is
big
like,
one?
no, I'm putting there, but I don't believe it. But then that's a
And
problem.
then it just, that's like the brick wall.
Yeah.
It really is.
So
And yeah,
that's the
that's like
beauty
I
of
was
that.
talking about, just the idea, and and it's always, I'm human, so it's all a challenge for myself as
Hmm.
well, and I
Yeah.
have to push my reset button quite often.
That's right. Yeah.
But there's the idea of just letting it flow, just allow the flow. You talk about the chakras to a degree that you can, and blockages, for example, they use that term in chakras, like in your body, it seems like there is an energy. Just let the energy flow, connected to the mind
Hmm.
somehow. That if you just don't block it, that, or don't, try not to doubt it, try not to block it, try not to fear success and or failure, right?
Hmm.
There's so many things that we can let get in our way of our desires, and let go of the attachment. Say, hey, it'd be really nice if this happens, and I think it will. Great,
Mhm.
move on. And just see what happens. I do believe synchronicities, things will fall into place. Like you say, it
Mhm.
won't take a long time
Yeah.
if you are not sitting on pins and needles waiting for it to take it, to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. If you think like right now, Elon Musk is kind of the most creative in business and doing things that does not make sense in some ways.
yeah, right,
But like he would not launch a business for doing rockets and say like we're just gonna try to improve what the NASA is doing, which is insane doing this.
right,
He went like we're gonna land the rocket back. Well, like
right.
it doesn't make any sense when he said something like this. But then you need to think very differently. You cannot think the way you're usually. You need to use creativity. And creativity is, if we talk about this, for example, when Einstein discovered the theory of relativity, he was not on the board trying to figure out the formula. It just came like this. It was an
Yeah.
intuition moment. And then they ask him, so why do you know it's the answer? I know. He just knew it. It just proven years afterwards, but he had the certainty, the knowingness that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And
So much things like this.
Tesla
Yeah.
said that he used to go to sleep. He would keep a pad of paper and a pencil by his bedside.
Mhm.
He would go to sleep. He'd wake up knowing something, and then
Yeah.
write down his
Yeah.
inventions or whatever. And that people say, "How'd you come up with this?" He goes, "I would wake up knowing and write it down."
Yeah.
And so that, of course, ties into the idea that there is this, information available to us,
That's correct.
but being in the right state. Same thing with so many inventions that they can point to, well-known ones like the telephone, for
Mhm.
example,
Yeah.
was invented, I think, by 3 or 4 people at the same time. It's
Yeah.
just the first one who got it,
Done
patented.
and
We
yeah,
know
that's
about
correct.
him, but it was in Italy and in the U.S. and I think another country, all coming up with the invention at the same
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
I think the we were seated. It's like, okay, here's an idea, wherever it's coming from. Now go make it happen, making sure it landed someplace, right? uh,
That's the creative process.
mhm,
If we understand everything is consciousness, in some ways we drill it down to three level. You have your individual consciousness, your
mhm,
collective consciousness, and then we would call it the quantum consciousness, whereas everything else that we don't know, but it's still there.
mhm.
Because if everything is one, then you're not taking something from somewhere that does not exist. So, like the energy cannot be destroyed, is not created, it's there. So the information is there. And at some point, like three, four-person tap to the same information about the phone. And then you have one that's going to the market faster and patent in and then becomes a thing. And we say, oh, there's one inventor. And that
Mhm.
example, there's like multiple of those.
Yeah.
So why? They didn't maybe have the money, didn't have the connection, they didn't have whatever it is, that they were not fast enough to put it there. But that's how life is.
Yeah.
So everything is possible, but I don't believe it's not possible. I don't have the money. I don't have the like now we have a thousand reasons why life not
Absolutely.
everything is possible.
You don't know how many people I talk to say, I would, but it won't work. I would, but they don't even take that next leap. And like, well, would it hurt to try?
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know, how about what if it did work? What if it did?
Yeah,
Um, anyway, we're coming up at about
yeah,
my time I need to cut off. But I just want to ask you for I'm going to put in the notes for everyone to see where they can get your book. I think I have that information, and if I don't, I'll make sure I
yeah, yeah,
grab
yeah.
it later. How they can reach you if they are you open to questions or I don't know if you have a communication or website where somebody can reach you. So
Yeah.
if you
So
want to share, any of
yeah,
anything
and
they
so
should know.
so my website is vitaquantum.com. So vita means life. The
Hmm.
quantum, you can say quantum in some ways is the physics of possibility. So it's a live a life of unlimited possibility. So we're transforming that perspective. I'm all social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, right now, LinkedIn also. I'm all over the place.
Right.
Um, and so the book is Rethinking Happiness. You can find it on Amazon right now. All over the world is available. Um, so I've got different programs. It's really about challenging how you see reality. Um, because I'm going back to everything is possible. The only reason it's not possible is your belief. So if we can't
Hmm.
transform all of this. So one time my dad went to India and he had the chance to ask the question to a master over there. And he asked, why can you materialize stuff and I can't? And his answer was, I know I'm God and you don't. So in spirituality, we all believe we're God, we're the same thing, we're oneness, we're later, but doesn't change anything. What the rational mind thinks has nothing to do with what you embody, what you incarnate. So that's
Hmm.
what we want to do and transform that perspective to a level where you're so high that life flows so much easier. You manifest things so much easier. And manifesting is not just about money. Money is
Yeah.
energy, like everything else. So it's living a life of alignment,
Hmm.
bring more happiness, to bring more sovereignty in life, because people are not free, even if they thinking they're free. There's like I've got
And it's
all
not from
concept
the
of
outside.
freedom.
They
Yeah.
keep themselves a prisoner. They're
Mhm.
not free from their own,
Yeah.
you know, uh, thoughts and
Yeah.
ideas.
You
Yeah.
know, just a crazy thing. In the 1700s, the French Revolution. So they went to the biggest prison. They opened the walls to get the prisoner out, and most of them didn't want to go out. So they prefer staying in which we call a prison, but
Hmm.
was constable, predictable. They didn't need to work. They were fed. It was simple.
Yeah.
So when you think of that, everybody's outside the prison are like, you're crazy. But the people inside are like, you're crazy to be there. So it's very
Hmm.
interesting how reality works. It's very simple, but human being complexifies so much things. Like transformation, it's simple, but yeah, but and then we thousand reason why
But I
not
can't.
transform. But
Yeah.
I can't. I can't. I don't have the money. But the
Yeah.
main reason is I don't trust myself
Hmm.
getting the results. So then I justify I don't have time, I don't have the money, it's my spouse that doesn't want. But taking
Hmm.
responsibility is something that we don't do anymore.
I would have, I could have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's excellent advice to
yeah,
just free your mind to be abundant,
yeah,
to be open to expansion and not to call negative, but to call it your opportunity to expand even more
yeah,
fully.
yeah,
I love it. I look forward to reading your book,
yeah.
and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for
I,
your time.